بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. Our subject today is Islam and Quran according to Nahjul Balagha, according to Imam Ali alayhi salam in Nahjul Balagha. First of all, Imam Ali alayhi salam in his maxims, the short sayings, number 125, gives definition to Islam. What is Islam? He says in maxim 125, لأنسبن الإسلام نسبة لم ينسبها أحد قبلي. الإسلام هو التسليم، والتسليم هو اليقين، واليقين هو التصديق، والتصديق هو الإقرار، والإقرار هو الأداء، والأداء هو العمل. Maybe in your edition the number is different, but you can refer to it later. The translation. Imam Ali alayhi salam says that I am defining Islam as no one has defined before me. لأنسبن الإسلام نسبة لم ينسبها أحد قبلي. He's not exaggerating, he's telling the truth. Islam is submission. Submission is conviction. Conviction is affirmation. Affirmation is acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is discharge of obligations, and discharge of obligations is action. Before I go further, as I said before, we see that all the teachings of Imam Ali alayhi salam match exactly what is in the Quran. In the Holy Quran, I'm quoting only 3 ayat. We see that even the prophets before the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, referring to Islam as the true religion and talking about this submission, taslim. And before that, we know all that the story of the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and his son Ismail, when he saw in his dream that he is slaughtering his own son Ismail, he told him, "Oh my son, I saw in my dream that I am slaughtering you." And what was the reaction of the son? The little 13 years old boy, Ismail? He said, "Ya aba tif'al ma tu'mar, satajiduni insha'Allah min as-sabirin." Father, do whatever you have been ordered to do, and inshallah you will find me as patient. Then, as both the father and son were prepared for this great sacrifice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about that what? فَلَمَّا أَسْلَمَا, when they both declared Islam, which means that they submitted to the will of Allah. Neither the father hesitated, nor the son said, "What's this? You're going to kill me. I'm going to report you to the police as domestic violence." No, he didn't say that. فَلَمَّا أَسْلَمَا, when both submitted to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this submission is so important that every pilgrim every year has to offer a sacrifice, a slaughter animal, to commemorate that readiness for what happened between son and father. Do you know? 3 million, the average of pilgrims every year, 3 million Hujjaj. The minimum they offer in their sacrifice is 1 sheep, which is nowadays, or for the last few years, the price of that is $100. Yeah? So 100 multiplied by 3 million makes what? $300 million only on one day, which is Eid al-Adha. All Muslims there, forget about Muslims in their countries, they have to offer the value of $300 million one day to do what? To remember that spirit of submission which both the father and son, Ismail and his father Ibrahim, were ready to do and to submit to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here we read in Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah number 2, ayah 1 to 8. رَبَّنَا وَاجْعَلْنَا مُسْلِمَيْنِ لَكَ. Ibrahim and Ismail, after they completed the building of the Kaaba, وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِنَا أُمَّةً مُسْلِمَةً لَكَ. رَبَّنَا وَاجْعَلْنَا مُسْلِمَيْنِ لَكَ وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِنَا أُمَّةً مُسْلِمَةً لَكَ. O Lord, make us both Muslims, submissive to you, and of our progeny make a nation submissive to you only. In 5 verses later, Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 132, that was ayah 128. In ayah 132, again, we read that Ibrahim enjoins on his sons, and so did Yaqub, saying, "O my son, or my sons, Allah has chosen the religion Islam for you. Therefore, you mustn't die save as Muslims. فَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ." So this is what Ibrahim alayhi salam speaks to his sons Ismail and Ishaq. And again, Yaqub, son of Ishaq, speaks to his children. Amongst them is Yusuf and other 11 sons. فَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. And we read in Yusuf and the whole story of Yusuf after he got that power and the kingdom or whatever sovereignty in Egypt. He says, "Tawaffani musliman wa alhiqni bis-salihin." Oh my Lord, you have given me dominion and taught me the interpretation of dreams. ... Let me die submitting to you as Muslim and join me with the virtuous. So these are 3 ayat, only 3 ayat, in addition to what I spoke earlier about the فَلَمَّا أَسْلَمَا, both father and son. So all Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, are founded and headed by the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. And this is the way that Ibrahim alayhi salam tells us about the true religion, and that is Islam. Imam Ali alayhi salam here affirms and confirms that and gives more detail. He says that, do you know what is Islam? Islam is submission. But he doesn't stop there, he goes further. A submission is conviction. وَالْإِسْلَامُ هُوَ الْيَقِينُ. Conviction is affirmation, تصديق. Affirmation is acknowledgement, إقرار. Acknowledgement is discharge of obligations, أداء. And discharge of obligations is action. So it is not acceptable that somebody says that, oh, I have full iman and belief in my heart. If I don't pray, if I don't wear hijab, if I don't do this, if I don't do that, if I sell alcohol, if I steal money from this and that, if I backbite, if I do this, I do that, it's all right because my heart is clean. No, no, no. The clean heart doesn't work here because all these have to follow one after. And the end of all that is discharge of obligations is what? Action. So, to say and to affirm and to claim that we are Muslims is not sufficient. Our actions must show that how we implement the Islamic teachings in our life. This is first. Then let's go to sermon number 1110 or 109 in your edition. Imam Ali alayhi salam speaks about Islam. 109 in the red book and 1110 in this one. The best means by which seekers of nearness to Allah, the glorified, the exalted, seek nearness is the belief in Him and His Prophet, fighting in His cause, for it is the high pinnacle of Islam, and to believe in Kalimatul Ikhlas. What is Kalimatul Ikhlas? The expression of divine purification. For it is just nature. Of course, the translation nature is here referring to the fitra, and fitra is a little different from this nature, because normally nature you refer to what? The natural causes. But the Imam alayhi salam doesn't talk about the natural causes. Imam speaks about the innate creation, that the fitra, the pure heart, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fitratallah allati fatara an-nas alayha la tabdila li khalqillah, that is in Surah 30, ayah number 30. Yeah? Surah Al-Rum, ayah number 30. فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا لَا تَبْدِيلَ لِخَلْقِ اللَّهِ ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ. So fitrah means that inner understanding of pure religion and the inner sight which guides you always to the right path. The translator puts as just nature. And the establishment of prayer, for it is the basis of community, payment of zakat, for it is compulsory obligation, fasting for the month of Ramadan, for it is the shield against chastisement, the performance of Hajj of the house of Allah, and the Umrah, which is the minor pilgrimage. For these two acts banish poverty, yes, banish poverty and wash away sins. There are hadith to say that if you go frequently to Hajj, it is one of the means to gain wealth. So you might be surprised. I'm going to spend money there. I'm going to pay to the tour for Hajj group, then spend a lot of money there. How could I? No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, and the hadith guarantees that those who frequently go to Hajj, their wealth is increased. Then the other one on the day of Arafah. We have authentic hadiths that when you attend the 9th of the Hijjah in the land of Arafat, the day is called Arafah and the land is Arafat. Yeah? So when you attend the land of Arafat on the day of Arafah, 9th of the Hijjah, all your sins are erased and forgiven. So if you look at the document, in any document, whatever things, files you have in the computer, there is a button. And that button is called what? Delete. So you have stored as much as you want, as many pages, as much information you think. You put there, pressing with that button of delete, what will happen? All Gone. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised, as the Prophet and the Imams have affirmed that those who attend Arafat and go to Hajj, when they leave by the sunset of the day of Arafah, all their sins are erased. Don't tell me about the debts you have to others. No. If you are, you have to pay something, you have some liability for payment, yeah? That's something else. That we are talking about what belongs to Allah, what is between Allah and His servants. حقوق الناس and not حقوق Allah, not حقوق الناس. Anyway, so Imam alayhi salam again confirms that for these two acts, which is the Hajj and Umrah, banish poverty and wash away sins. Regard for kinship, for it increases wealth and length of life. In many hadith we have that if you do Silat al-Rahim, keep your connection with your relatives, this is one of the means to have a longer life. But if you cut off and don't observe this Silat al-Rahim, the life will be shortened. And in one hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, that somebody's span of life was designated to be 30 years. And when he cut off the bonds with his relatives, it was decreased to 3 years. And somebody who has had only 3 years to live more, he continued being good to his relatives, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increased that to 30 years. So this is the meaning, that shortening the life or increasing the lifespan only because you keep your bonds with your relatives. Giving alms secretly, for it covers shortcomings. Giving alms openly, for it protects against a bad death. And extending benefits. What is bad death? ميتة السوء. Nowadays we see that sometimes diseases, disasters, some very, very difficult ailments, or sometimes, God forbid, some ailments which brings shame to the person. For example, God forbid, if someone died as a result of HIV or something like that. People, oh, what's this? What happened? Even they don't think that maybe some blood transfusions which were affected, and this led to this poor person, innocent person to be affected by that and die. But always create this what? Negative and dark picture in our minds about the person who died with this bad. So, ميتة السوء of somebody, God forbid, dies, no one is at home, is left for a week or 2 weeks, nobody even knocks at the door or knows about, and after 2 weeks they realize that he was in very, very rotten and bad situation. All these are types in the hadith as called ميتة السوء, bad death. So what prevents that? وصدقة العلانية فإنها تدفع ميتة السوء. Giving alms openly, for it protects against a bad death. And extending benefits to people, for it saves from positions of disgrace. وصنائع المعروف فإنها تقي مصارع الهوان. Next paragraph speaks about the Quran, which I'm going to choose another khutbah from the Nahjul Balagha regarding the Quran, and that is coming in a minute. This is in Sermon 176 with me, and I think in the red copy is 175. 175. The title is Preaching, but if you move from first, second, and third paragraph to the fourth paragraph, the greatness of the Holy Quran. واعلموا أن هذا القرآن هو الناصح الذي لا يغش والهادي الذي لا يضل والمحدث الذي لا يكذب وما جالس هذا القرآن أحد إلا قام عنه بزيادة أو نقصان زيادة في هدى أو نقصان من عمى. And know that this Quran is an advisor who never deceives. Sometimes people give you the wrong advice, and you realize that you wasted your time, you wasted your money, even you wasted your whatever, good faith you had. You wasted all that with very, very disadvantages to you. But the advisor who never deceives is the Quran. And a leader who never misleads, and a narrator who never speaks a lie, because the Quran is the ultimate truth. A narrator who never speaks a lie. No one will sit beside the Quran but that when he rises he will achieve one addition or one diminution. Addition in his guidance or elimination in his spiritual blindness. You should also know that no one will need anything after guidance from the Quran, and no one will be free from want before guidance from the Quran. The significance of the Quran is this, that whatever guidance you need, it is the book of guidance, it is book of light, it is the book which guarantees if you stick to it and stick to the teachings of the Quran, you will achieve the maximum of salvation. Salvation for this life and for hereafter. You learn for whatever good for you and for your society. For both individuals and social teachings and admonishments of the Quran are achieved, and when you ponder and act upon the teachings of the Quran, you get the ultimate guidance. This is what Imam Ali alayhi salam says regarding the Quran. Then, therefore, seek cure from it for your ailment. In the old days, and I remember in my early days of communicating with friends and talking about Islam in Najaf, when I was 14, 15, I always were using this phrase, that why people only get the blessing of the Quran when they move to the new house. They take a copy of the Quran as a sign of blessing. Or when they have the marriage contract or aqd or katb al-kitab, they put the name of the Quran as a sign of blessing. Or sometimes when somebody, and I saw with two great personalities in their country, royals, that when we invited in one conference in Amman, another one in Kuwait, a long time ago, that his family wrote by the door, I and the Quran, and normally we put the Quran on our heads when somebody wants to travel. So is that all about Quran? To use it as means for blessing for the nikah ceremony, or for a new house, or for example, when you go on trip, put the Quran on your head, that's it. Is that sufficient to connect ourselves with the spirit of the Quran? Sometimes you say that there are certain ayat in the Quran which are very useful for ailments. Yes. The spiritual disorder or psychological disorder, I have experienced that for many people, and if you use that is good, that those who have some sort of worries and those who have some sort of psychological disorder, reciting surah number 13, ayah number 28, ala bidhikrillah tatma'innul qulub. In remembrance of Allah, hearts find tranquility and peace. And believe me, in one occasion, I used that for a non-Muslim who was in the hospital. And he asked me to do something because he was so desperate. He was 70 years old. He was so desperate. And I said, put your hand on your chest, on your heart, and recite after me. When I recited 10 times, ala bidhikrillah tatma'innul qulub, in remembrance of Allah, hearts find tranquility and peace. And he did so. Indeed, I didn't go to visit him. He was visiting somebody in his neighborhood or the bed next to him. And believe me that 2 days later, his family told me that the doctors were surprised how cure, not 100%, at least 70% cure he got, yeah, about that only. So we find ayat in the Quran to be good for what? For ailments. Reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, Alhamd. We have in our hadith. In our hadith we have that if there was somebody on the verge of dying and you recite Surah Al-Fatiha 70 times, not with Qul Huwallah, no, not with Surah Al-Ikhlas, Surah Al-Hamd, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, until Waladhdallin. If you recite that 70 times, or for example, 7 people gathering by the bed of that ill person, and they recite each one 10 times, so it means 70 times, yeah? And if he recovers and he stands on his feet, don't be surprised. What is this hadith? Because this is the miracle of the Quran. So, it is the way that we benefit from the Quran in different ways. Those which I mentioned and what is going to follow by the Imam alayhi salam in Nahjul Balagha. So, we go to the spiritual or the inner ailments which are mentioned by the Imam. Therefore, seek cure from it for your ailment and seek its assistance in your distresses. It contains, be careful with this, a cure for the biggest diseases. Oh, Imam Ali, what are the biggest and most dangerous diseases? Is it heart problem? Is it diabetes? It is what? Imam alayhi salam says that the biggest diseases, namely unbelief, hypocrisy, revolt, and misguidance. فإن فيه شفاء من أكبر الداء وهو الكفر والنفاق والغي والضلال. So some people think, oh, it is all right with hypocrisy that I smile in the face of people, I love you, oh, how great you are, but when the moment he disappears, I say, how so-and-so person is his. Okay? This is hypocrisy. This, when you meet him, you are in front of the person, in the presence, you admire and praise, but immediately as they disappear, you try to criticize. No, this is hypocrisy. Be always frank. Either you keep smiling and admiring and praising, so don't take anything disadvantageous or wrong about him later on. But in your tongue, you say something, and your heart, you believe in something else. No. This is hypocrisy. And dhalal, which is misguidance. Pray to Allah through it and turn to Allah with its love, Quran's love. Don't ask the people through it. There is nothing like it through which the people should turn to Allah, the Sublime.